I want to start by saying I'm not the type of person who scares easily. I worked security at a regional hospital in rural Tennessee for almost 4 years. Night shifts, 12 hours, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I'd walked those halls hundreds of times in the dark. I knew every shadow, every sound, every groan the building made when the temperature dropped. I thought I knew everything about that place. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday in February, dead of winter, the kind of cold that makes the whole world go quiet. We were unusually short-staffed that night. A stomach bug had taken out 2 of my coworkers, so I was running the entire building solo. Not ideal, but I'd done it before. My rounds took me past the ICU on the 2nd floor, down to the morgue level in the basement, back up through radiology, and then finally up to the 3rd floor, which, at the time, was completely shut down for renovation. No patients, no staff, just plastic sheeting, construction equipment, and darkness. I didn't even need to go up there most nights. I'd just check that the stairwell door was locked and move on. But at around 2 a.m., my radio crackled. The motion sensors on the 3rd floor had tripped. I figured it was an animal. We'd had a raccoon get in through a vent the month before. So I grabbed my flashlight and headed up. The stairwell door was still locked. I used my key, pushed it open, and stepped onto the 3rd floor. The plastic sheeting hanging from the ceiling moved. I told myself it was the air pressure from opening the door. I started walking the hallway, sweeping my flashlight left and right. Construction materials stacked against the walls, exposed drywall, a few old hospital beds shoved into a corner waiting to be disposed of. Nothing. I was almost at the end of the hall when I noticed one of the old beds had been moved. I know this because I walked this floor every other night during the renovation check. That bed had been against the far wall for 6 weeks. Now it was in the middle of the hallway. I stopped, and that's when I heard it. Breathing. Slow, deliberate, coming from behind me. I turned around. The hallway was empty, but the plastic sheeting, all of it, the entire length of the hall, was pressed flat against the wall, like something had just walked through it, like something was standing behind it right now. I'm not proud of what I did next. I walked backward to the stairwell door, keeping my eyes on that sheeting the entire time, and I left. I locked the door. I called it in as a sensor malfunction in my report. I never went back to the 3rd floor alone again. But here's the part that still keeps me up at night. A week later, the construction crew came back in. One of the guys came down to the security desk during his lunch break. He said they'd found something strange up there that morning. One of the old beds had drag marks around it, like it had been moved in circles, repeatedly, over and over. And in the dust on the floor near the far window, there were footprints. Small ones, bare feet. They faced the wall. This happened when I was 19. I was working the overnight shift at a gas station off I-40 in New Mexico. Middle of nowhere. The kind of place where you could go 3 hours without a single customer. I actually liked it. I had my music, my snacks, a little TV behind the counter. It was easy money. Until the night a woman pulled up to pump 7 and never came inside. She pulled in around 3:15 a.m. I saw her on the camera. Older car, dark colored, couldn't tell the make. She got out, started pumping gas. Normal. 5 minutes passed. I wasn't really paying attention. 10 minutes passed. I glanced at the camera again. She was still there, standing at the pump. But she wasn't pumping anymore. She was just standing there, facing my window. I figured maybe her card got declined and she was too embarrassed to come in. That happens sometimes. So I hit the intercom button. "Hey, everything okay out there? You need any help?" Nothing. I tried again. She didn't move. Didn't look at the speaker. Didn't acknowledge me at all. Just stood there, staring at the window. I couldn't see her face clearly on the camera. The angle was wrong. But something about the way she was standing felt off. Her arms were at her sides, completely still. Most people fidget, shift their weight, check their phone. She was completely rigid. I called my manager. Got no answer. I called again. Voicemail. At the 20-minute mark, I decided to lock the front door. Don't ask me why. It just felt like the right thing to do. And the moment I stood up from my chair to walk to the door, she moved. She walked away from the pump. Slowly. Not toward the door. Not toward her car. She walked to the edge of the parking lot, right where the light stopped and the dark highway began. And she just stood there at the edge of the light, with her back to me now. I sat back down. I watched her on the camera for another 40 minutes. She didn't move. At some point, I must have dozed off in my chair. When I woke up, she was gone. Her car was still there. The car was still there when my morning replacement showed up. It was still there when the owner came in at noon. They ran the plates. The car had been reported stolen 3 days earlier, out of Albuquerque, roughly 200 miles away. They never found the woman. But the thing I think about most, the thing I never told my manager, is what I saw when I rewound the security footage the next morning. At 4:47 a.m., while I was asleep in my chair, she walked back to the pump. She picked up the pump nozzle. She pointed it at the window. And she stood there like that for 11 minutes before putting it back and walking away again. I quit 3 days later. I drove forklift at a distribution warehouse for 2 years. Big facility, over 400,000 square feet. The night crew was small, maybe 15 people, spread across a building the size of 4 football fields. You could go an entire shift without crossing paths with a coworker. Bay 9 was the oldest section of the building, original construction from the 1960s. They didn't tear it down when they expanded because it was still structurally sound, but no one liked working back there. The lighting was bad, the racking was older and creaked constantly, and it was always, inexplicably, colder than the rest of the building. Everyone had a story about Bay 9. Most of them I brushed off. Then I got assigned back there for a full week during a restock rotation. The first 3 nights were fine. Quiet, cold, uncomfortable, but fine. On the 4th night, I was running a pallet of inventory to the back of Bay 9, deep in the racking, when my forklift died. Just shut off, mid-travel. I tried to restart it. Nothing. Radioed maintenance. They said they'd send someone in about 20 minutes. So I sat there, alone, in the dark back end of Bay 9, waiting. About 5 minutes in, I heard footsteps. Even strides, unhurried, coming from deeper in the bay, from the section behind me that we didn't even use. Product back there was so old it had been written off. Nobody had touched it in years. I assumed it was a coworker cutting through. "Hey," I called out. "Who's back there?" The footsteps stopped. I waited. They started again, closer now. "Hello?" I called again. They stopped again. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight, pointed it down the aisle. Nothing. Just rows of old racking disappearing into the dark. I turned off my flashlight. The footsteps started again immediately. This went on for what felt like 10 minutes, but was probably 2. Every time I turned my light on, they stopped. Every time I turned it off, they came back. Whatever was back there didn't want to be seen. When my forklift suddenly powered back on, no reason, no explanation, it just turned on, I drove out of Bay 9 and told the shift supervisor I needed a reassignment. I didn't explain why. I just said I wasn't going back there. He didn't ask questions. Turns out I wasn't the first to make that request. Apparently, years before the warehouse was built, the land was the site of a factory fire. 19 workers died. The building was demolished and the land sat vacant for 15 years before the warehouse went up. I don't know if that means anything, but I do know that the section of Bay 9 where I heard those footsteps corresponds exactly, by square footage and position, to where the original factory floor would have been. I looked it up. I don't drive forklift anymore.